Professor Lee, in the statement between US and Japan following their 2+2 meeting in Tokyo, they did name Taiwan. They said that the maintenance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait is an indispensable element of security and prosperity in the international community. These are messages that we hear quite often now. The NHK says Japan and the US are very worried that Beijing could be emboldened enough to try to invade Taiwan. How much did you think, from what we've gathered from the trip so far, how much of it is actually about Taiwan?
I think during the meeting between Blinken and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, actually they mentioned Taiwan. I think Blinken accused China of being aggressive in the Taiwan Strait. But of course, Wang Yi will say this is the domestic issue of China. So I think Taiwan issue is still a very important part during this trip. And also I think in the 2+2 meetings between the United States and Japan, they also mentioned that maintaining the stability across the Taiwan Strait is very important.
But how about the agreements? How about the bolstering of capabilities? How much of that was targeted at Taiwan? I mean, there's a refocusing attention on the southwest islands of Japan.
I feel this trip is more about to reassure allies, especially Japan and the Philippines. Taiwan is probably, I think Taiwan is mentioned, but the Taiwan issue is probably not a focus in this trip.
Right, but then was also the doubling of the budget for the EDCA sites. That's the sites that the US has access to in the Philippines. You know, the new sites are very close to, or facing or very close to Taiwan. How about you, Professor Liu? How much do you think, you know, these initiatives were actually about Taiwan?
Yeah, I think without naming the Taiwan issue, I think both sides, the United States and Japan, are quite worried about the contingencies that can happen to the Taiwan Strait. And because on the Chinese side, no one can escape the tyranny of a calendar. Xi Jinping is actually facing the end of his third term in 2027. So even though people are making some very bold guess that maybe before that date, he would try to invade Taiwan to win over his fourth term. But I think it hasn't happened yet. So we still need to wait to see. However, as a trend scholar in international security, I think we need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So even though China there seems to be no indication that China is going to do this soon. But I think for everyone in this region, we need to get prepared. Yeah, so I think this is quite important.
Professor Lee, of course, there's the US election coming up in November. So for some commentators, they looked at this trip by Antony Blinken, farewell trip, but it was a way of shoring up support perhaps for the Democrats to have some election gain. He visited Vietnam, Laos, Japan, the Philippines, Singapore, and Mongolia. You know, why do you think that it was important to have this trip now?
I think, actually, I don't think this trip has too much to do with the election, because Biden, because the trip was actually scheduled way before Biden withdrew from the presidential race. But I do believe that the goal is to reassure the US allies in this region. So it's an important part of the foreign policy under the Biden administration.
Do you think it was about, you know, securing those arrangements so that they cannot be undone, Professor Liu, by a possible Trump presidency?
Yes, I think I agree with Professor Lee's comments about reassurance. If we are making a comparison between the Democrats' foreign policy vis-a-vis the Republican foreign policy into this region, I think we can see that there seems to be a big difference between the two different political parties in the United States. The Democrats now are trying to keep the momentum going because the Asia-Pacific and Indo-Pacific region seems to be a focus to the Democrats. I'm not suggesting that the Republicans, they don't care about this region. I'm suggesting that, especially if we pay attention to US foreign policy after the end of the Cold War, it is more often than not, the Democrats administrations put more emphasis on this region. Of course, China seems to be the key player in the Democrats' thinking about the Indo-Pacific region. So under the Clinton administration, we can see that they are trying to engage China, trying to encourage China to become a responsible player in the international stage. However, this kind of taking began to change under the Obama administration. So on top of that, if we take a look at Biden administration's policy toward this region, we can easily find that it was Biden's initiative to elevate Quad to have summit meeting in 2021. So I would say the summit meeting of the Quad seems to be Biden's baby, so slash Blinken's baby. So I think this is quite important for Blinken to further secure and make sure that this kind of arrangement cannot be undone by the Trump administration again.
Okay. That being said, Professor Lee, so, here we are, we're in Taiwan. Tell me how much concern there is then about a possible Trump presidency in this region.
I think Taiwanese are quite concerned about the chance of Trump being elected again as the U.S. president, because we know that he used to be a businessman, and he changed, actually his mindset or his policies changed a lot. And when he was the president before, actually he took more like unilateral action. He doesn't really care about other countries. He doesn't care about allies. He mentioned that, so the alliance with Japan and South Korea are actually a burden for the United States. So actually they need to pay, right? He also mentioned that Taiwan should pay some protection fee to the US government. So I think there is indeed some concern in Taiwan that if Trump becomes the president again, Taiwan may be abandoned, or at least Taiwan may become less protected, or Taiwan may become less important for the US government.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not that Taiwan doesn't want to pay more on self-defense. It's actually the fear, Professor Liu, of being abandoned.
I think because according to the past experiences Taiwan has had with the Trump administration, everything seems to be possible. I think this kind of unpredictability that would worry allies a lot around the world. So I would say, from my personal opinion, Taiwan would be willing to shoulder more obligation and responsibility for our own national security, that's for sure. But usually when it comes to international relations or foreign affairs, to what extent Taiwan need to pay more for ourselves? By paying, I'm not just saying about the money. I was saying about how devoted we need to be for our national security. I think that is the key.